when we talk about witness protection in Trinidad and Tobago, do you have any concerns that we may still not have the proper kind of witness protection program?
Our witness protection program is not the best protection program. We have had complainants wanting protection to give information about a police officer because they fear for their life.
But Mr. Cummings, I think you hit the nail on the head a little while ago, because with the COVID and with the pandemic, it has caused a lot of institutions to treat with the way you deal with business in a more efficient way.
Let's discuss the issues. Let's dialogue towards developing a deeper understanding, fostering an atmosphere of peace, all towards creating better, stronger families and communities. Right here on ISAC 98.1 FM, every Wednesday, 8 to 9 p.m. The Citizens Community Forum. Your host, Stephen Cummings. Good evening, I'm Stephen Cummings and welcome again to yet another edition of the Citizens Community Forum. Our objective is always to have an engaging, interactive and civil discourse, and in so doing help develop a culture of peace and understanding through citizens' participation. Our guests are persons who express views and opinions and perspectives of their own, and sometimes may not necessarily be that of the FBN network, the Citizens Community Forum, or that of the host. Our topics are also wide-ranging. Discussions at times may be emotionally charged, but surely we can always find common ground and learn from each other, irrespective of differing views. Now, Trinidad and Tobago is once again placed at a crossroad. We have seen recently the crumbling of institutions that are supposed to be independent public guardians of the state. And not for the first time, one remembers the troubles that surrounded the then constituted Integrity Commission of Trinidad and Tobago and the resignations that followed in 2015 on an issue dubbed Emailgate. A body set up with powers of oversight and key role for the prevention of corruption and promotion of the integrity of persons in public life. Bodies such as the Elections and Boundaries Commission, the Teaching Service Commission, the Regulated Industries Commission, the Equal Opportunities Commission, and even the Judicial Arm of State have all been attacked in some form. And I'm sure many others which stumbled along the way. Now, the PSC, that's the Police Service Commission in 2021, leading to what some say is a constitutional crisis. Joining me this evening inside the Citizens Community Forum is Mr. Nizam Mohammed, an attorney at law, served as a Speaker of the House of Representatives in the Third Republican Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, 1987 to 1991. At the time, he was also the elected Member of Parliament for Tabaquite, served twice as opposition MP, 1976 to 81, 1981, and 1981 to 1986. He's also a former chairman of the Police Service Commission and indeed one who is well experienced not only on parliamentary matters but constitutional matters. Mr. Mohammed, good evening to you and welcome to the Citizens Community Forum.
Good evening to you, Mr. Cummings. It's a pleasure to be with you on your program this evening. Separation of powers means exactly that. Constituted bodies are under our Constitution, and they carry out various executive functions, and they are expected to be independent of each other and separate from each other. That is what is termed the separation of powers. Mm-hmm. You have three major arms of executive authority under our Constitution, interfering in the exercise of or rather the discharge of the responsibilities and the functions of the Police Service Commission.
Yes.
They remain insulated, isolated. However, there have to be a crossing over at some time. For example, again, using the Police Service Commission as an example,
Yes.
the Parliament is the body, according to the existing laws, that will approve the appointment of a commissioner of police or an acting commissioner of police,
Yes.
or a deputy commissioner of police or an acting deputy commissioner of police. However, in coming to the conclusion as to who are the persons who should be enlisted for consideration, the Police Service Commission, the members of the Police Service Commission, they do this independently of the legislature, independently of the president, independently of the judiciary. And that is where their independence is really focused. However, there comes a time when they have to move this process to another level. What do they do? According to the law, they have to submit a list of persons whom, in their opinion, ought to be considered for whatever vacancy exists.
Okay.
When they draw up that list, again without any interference, that list is submitted to the head of state, the president. The president is now under a duty to take that list and submit that list to the parliament.
Yes.
Now the people's representatives, who are the members of the parliament, they will consider the recommendations of the Police Service Commission, and they will have full and free discussions in the form of a debate as to whether or not someone should be appointed the Commissioner of Police or Acting Commissioner of Police, as the case might be. And there are those who may voice a contrary opinion. And there is where the voice of the people will be echoed on their behalf by their elected representatives.
All right. So that there's a process, and
there is a process.
Yes. So we'll develop that point a little further on, as you talked about the Police Service Commission, but there are some other areas we wanted to touch on as well. But at this time, we'd just like to remind our listeners that you are viewing and you're listening to the Citizens Community Forum. I'm Stephen Cummings. I have with me Mr. Nizam Mohammed, attorney at law, former Speaker of the House of Representatives, and a former chair of the Police Service Commission. Our topic this evening: investigating the role and function of independent institutions in a constitutional democracy, focus on Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Mohammed, before we continue, I just wanted us to get a listen to the part of a press conference that the Prime Minister spoke, and just part of what he would have said, dealing with this same business of independent institutions. And I'd have you respond to that. Let's just get a listen to the Prime Minister as he spoke at a previous conference.
The population has been disturbed for the last 2 or 3 weeks on this question of breach and separation of powers. I have addressed this matter here before, without going into much detail, that this question of independence, when you talk about this independent commission, and independent this and independent that, for the man in the street or the man in the taxi going to town, that independence has in it, even in law, it has in it a certain element of interaction. There's no public entity that is cloistered to independence. I've seen people asking, they want to know if the Prime Minister went to the President's house. And until the country knows that, we will not know if our democracy has been breached and our democratic future is in peril and so on. Absolute hogwash. And misleading people who rely on them for guidance and get that as professional guidance. I took 2 oaths of office. One, at President House to be Prime Minister and one in the Parliament. And under my oath of office, as long as I hold this oath of office, I am required by law to communicate with the office of the President, by law.
Mr. Mohammed, the Prime Minister there, Dr. Keith Rowley, as he spoke at a previous press conference dealing with this very same subject again, I think that he would have echoed some of the very same things that you've just said there, Mr. Mohammed.
You recall him saying that no matter how much independence, words to the effect,
yes,
no matter how much independence there is in any institution, there has to be, and I'm using my word, a bit of crossover.
Yes, yes. But sometimes that crossover, is on a very thin,
very, yes.
line. And therein lies some of the issues that we have from time to time, Mr. Mohammed. And how can we treat with a situation where we have to have this sort of interlink, but yet still there is a demand on institutions to be independent.
Question,
yes, I'm saying that when there is such a thin line between when we talk about independent institutions and separation of powers, how do we treat with that particular area that sometimes lends itself to the kinds of problems that we have ever so often, not only in Trinidad and Tobago, but I'm sure in other democracies.
Indeed, there is a very thin line, and there is where we repose the trust and the confidence in the leadership of our country to ensure that we do not overstep that thin line. For example, in the appointment of a commissioner of police, you may have also heard in the last few days the Prime Minister saying that he had communicated with the Police Service Commission and he had indicated some of his concerns concerning the outgoing Commissioner of Police.
Yes.
And he had written to them, I think, more than once. Now, he is doing that in his capacity as the Honorable Prime Minister of the country, one.
Yes, duty bound under the Constitution, is it?
Duty bound under the Constitution, and by virtue of being head of the cabinet, and by virtue of being head of the National Security Council, it is extremely important for the Prime Minister to be comfortable with the appointment of a Commissioner of Police. And if he has concerns, he is duty bound to communicate and do so properly and to the right quarters to express his concerns.
Okay.
And I think this is what has actually happened.
All right.
So I think it is, sorry.
So in that context, Mr. Mohammed, I want to ask you a direct question. Do you believe that we have a constitutional crisis in Trinidad and Tobago regarding what has transpired over the past few weeks involving, again, the Police Service Commission, the Prime Minister as head of the executive arm of government and the office even of head of state?
If we do have a constitutional crisis, that crisis has been created by the Police Service Commission. It does not have to do with some of the peripheral issues that we are bringing into the picture, and I think that is not those matters do not lend themselves to a constitutional crisis. I think if anything at all, they lend themselves to political confusion.
And interference, would you say that?
I beg your pardon?
Is it also a case of political interference?
I would not say it is a case of political interference. The politicians have a right to question, but the actions of the executive, the actions of any institution in the country but whenever they do so, they are expected to do so with the greatest sense of responsibility.
And statesmanship.
I
I hear you.
yes, with the greatest sense of responsibility.
Yes.
And I think that the Honorable Prime Minister discharged his responsibility by expressing his concern about the outgoing Commissioner of Police. And if he has consulted with the head of state, and I think she has said this much, as I wrote in a piece published, I think, in the newspapers, one of the newspapers yesterday.
Yes.
Whatever discussion takes place at President's house is not for the marketplace, and I'm using my expression.
For public consumption, except that there is the intent on either party to reveal what discussions or what.
Exactly, sir. Exactly. So let us get real about this particular issue that you are raising. It is either we trust or we do not trust those whom we put in authority. And the loftiest of offices in our country is the office of president.
Yes.
Right.
But even that very same office is being attacked now, Mr. Mohammed. But before you continue, and I'll have you respond to that question as well. I want to just go back to this issue again of the Police Service Commission. The former commissioner, acting commissioner of police, Gary Griffith, also has been speaking out about this issue. And let's just get a listen to what he said in a social media posting a little earlier on this week.
As a nation has watched a massive conspiracy by a few who seem bent on doing all that they can to ensure that I do not sit in the seat of Commissioner of Police. A few elements within this country appear to thrive on confusion and bacchanal, and on this I have no intention of engaging. For to engage is to suggest I need this job for my own personal benefit. If the powers that be do not want me in office, that's their prerogative. Service to country comes in many varied permutations. On numerous occasions, to my personal and family detriment, I have offered my service to country, and that's all I could do. My issue with this entire process, though, is that it was all avoidable. There are certain institutions that held all the power. I could have been told at any stage that a different direction was preferred. There was no need to attempt to impugn my integrity. This is the only aspect of this saga that I will continue to fight to the end. The comedy of errors of this plot varied from 2 merit lists for acting and substantive appointments being withheld, blatant false allegations made by the then PSC chairman that I was interfering with an investigation, that same PSC chairman having me suspended without authorization or rationale, one specific official being so out of place to tell me not to report to work, and then referring to me as a civilian as if this is something that is demeaning in his eyes. And then we have a one-man minority report from a 2-member committee by someone with no law enforcement authority making false allegations without a shred of evidence, being leaked to a media reporter and published, all in an attempt to affect my character. All of which clearly demonstrates a level of desperation to have me removed from office without due process. I didn't force anyone to appoint me as acting commissioner. In fact, I never even applied for this post as acting commissioner. I didn't force anyone to adjust the law to allow me to act, nor am I or can I force anyone to appoint me as Commissioner of Police. As a country, we have to accept the consequences of our actions. Time will tell the wisdom of this decision. For now, I will just watch the conspiracy continue to unfold.
Mr. Mohammed, a very outspoken Gary Griffith there, as we have come to know him. Again, speaking about process and what should be the remit of I suppose the office of the president and the parliament. And again, going back to that very same issue, and I think you also referenced that very earlier on in the discussion, is that there is a process, and I think you outlined that as I said earlier on in the discussion.
The chairman of the Police Service Commission, according to Her Excellency the President, submitted and withdrew.
Yes. And that's that's a bone of contention as well. Yes.
A merit list.
Yes.
What Mr. Griffith is contending is that the president has no discretion in the matter, and therefore she was duty bound to continue the process by forwarding that merit list to the parliament.
Yes.
The president is there to confer, to consult, to convene, to discuss, to seek advice, and on her own take decisions. If in her discretion, in the exercise of her authority as head of state, she came to the conclusion that she ought to accede to the request made by the chairman of the Police Service Commission and have the merit list withdrawn. That was her decision. And the Constitution says you cannot bring a civil action against the head of state in a matter of that nature. So that we know, anyone looking at what has taken place over the last few weeks, if there perhaps 2 or 3 weeks, the mess that has been created, it started with the Police Service Commission, and it has ended with the resignation of each and every member of the Police Service Commission.
Therefore, described as an imbroglio, Mr. Mohammed.
Yes, I have also described it as that. Total confusion. Therefore, we hold them accountable and we hold them responsible, and they have accepted responsibility for their bad decisions that they have taken, and they have done the correct thing, and they have resigned. What is the next step, sir? The next step, I respectfully suggest, is we get on with the business of reconstituting the Police Service Commission, get on with the business of having them prepare a new merit list in the new Police Service Commission, and get on with the business of bringing that matter to the Parliament so that the process can be speeded up and we can get everything back on track. Isn't that what responsible governance is all about? And you and I, as citizens of this country, aren't we equally responsible to ensure that that kind of responsible behavior come into play so that we can have this particular mess cleaned up and settled once and for all? Why is it we are creating situations where we keep on hammering and chiseling away at the edifice of the democratic process? Why are we so hell-bent on creating confusion so that, and with the full knowledge that we will create unease and unrest in the society?
Mr. Mohammed, we've been here before. I mentioned in my opening, we had a similar situation with the Integrity Commission so many years ago. Why is it so difficult for us to get at least this one right?
Because we have a problem. We are such a small country. We are such a small country. We know each other. We interact with each other. And it is so easy to label an individual with the color yellow or the color red and that sort of thing. Difficult for decent people in this country to come forward because they prefer to remain in the shadows rather than have their names dragged into the pit and into the gutter.
All right. So that we continue to have, that challenge there, Mr. Mohammed, in, I suppose, finding the right people, and not just finding the right people, but for the right people to come forward and be of service, to the national community. I've also heard the issue where there isn't, that cadre of when we talk about even succession. You have these commissions, and there isn't any system in place, Mr. Mohammed, to say, well, okay, we know that this commission, the commission of, or the life of this commission is, let's say, 5 years. I'm just using a time period. There's no system of succession. There's no system. There's no structure in place so that you can have that kind of, delegation of power and that continuance, as it were. Is that another one of our problems that we face here in Trinidad and Tobago?
I think it is one of the fundamental problems. It is one of the most serious problems. Do you know how many organizations that are not in the forefront as
yes,
excuse me, as the Police Service Commission? You know how many of them are unable from time to time to sit and engage in due deliberations because they do not have a quorum, and the powers that be do not take steps to fill those vacancies,
yes,
and that sort of thing. It happens from time to time. No value in us going into any further detail, but I'm telling you what happens.
Yes. Why I ask the question is that even now, Mr. Mohammed, I heard that the president would have, at least there are about 3 names which, have been brought forward. And of course, a quorum, you need, I think, 5 persons. And there is now the frantic search for 2 other persons to make up that constitutional body. And I'm saying that why is it we have to get to this point of using, the local parlance to be scrambling at the 11th hour to put such a, an important body in place?
Because I do not think that, we have a system at which we have actually nurtured, and that is, we make successive prime ministers virtual dictators. Everybody waits on the current prime minister, whether it is now or 5 years or 10 years or 20 years ago. Everybody waits on the prime minister to find 5 suitable persons. You need leadership in this country where when you take up leadership position, you must have the capacity to lead. And leading doesn't mean, leading includes assisting in ensuring that all of these constitutional arrangements are in place and all the conditions are fulfilled. Don't you think that we should have members of parliament on both sides submitting names for these independent bodies to whoever it is in the legislature for such a person's consideration?
Yes.
Chances are the opposition may come up with 1 or 2 names, and the government will say, we never thought about these 2 persons.
Yes.
These are trustworthy persons.
Yes.
Not only are they trustworthy,
but certainly that's not happening, and that may not happen,
because sir, what happens is, in our country, we take the parties of politics to the extreme that it becomes so absurd to the extent that we make the process and we make the system unworkable.
Okay.
And we think we can win elections by frustrating the system.
All right, Mr. Mohammed, we have to take a break now. We'll continue that discussion in a short bit, but we do have to take a break. We just want to remind our listeners that you are listening to and viewing the Citizens Community Forum. I'm Stephen Cummings. I have with me Mr. Nizam Mohammed, attorney at law, former Speaker of the House of Representatives, and former Chair of the Police Service Commission. Our topic this evening, investigating the role and function of independent institutions in a constitutional democracy, focus on Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Mohammed, we take a short break and we come right back. Hello, I'm Stephen Cummings. Join us every Wednesday for the Citizens Community Forum. Where are we now? Your assessment?
We're in a very dark place. As Mr. Vivian Naipaul wrote in a title of his book, we are in an area of darkness.
The structure of the economy between 2009 and 2019, Stephen, landed this economy in the 25 worst performing economies in the world. Even my honest answer is, except for the poorest and most vulnerable, we have to cut. It's not as if we have a choice.
And that's why I'm saying, Stephen, we really need some clear guidance and direction from the government in terms of what's the long-term plan. We know we're in a dark place, but we need you to be able to show us the light and show us, well, okay, we're headed in that direction. We don't want to end up like the Israelites wandering for 40 years in the desert and making no progress whatsoever.
And we are streaming live on YouTube, FBN TV, Facebook, and Isaac 98.1 FM every Wednesday, 8 to 9 p.m. And welcome back to the Citizens Community Forum. I'm Stephen Cummings. This evening we are discussing the business of investigating the role and function of independent institutions in a constitutional democracy focused on Trinidad and Tobago. And I have with me Mr. Nizam Mohammed, attorney at law, former Speaker of the House of Representatives and former Chair of the Police Service Commission. Mr. Mohammed, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Cummings.
Before we went to the break, there was we were talking about that process and you know, that system whereby there is that interlink, and even though we have independent institutions and they're supposed to function independently, there are times when we have this overlap. I suppose, you know, overlapping, you know, in some instances are unnecessary based on what the issue, you know, may be at times. And the Prime Minister came under some heavy criticism as well for a proposed visit, I believe, he made to the you know, office of the president or president's house or wherever it was. And let's just get a listen to how the Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Keith Rowley, responded to that very same issue.
I speak to the president on the phone, and if there's a situation that I think in my capacity and in my judgment that the president should know, I am duty bound under law to do that. And interestingly enough, if the Klankatang and the, what they call the imbroglio was about the president not being informed about something, it would have been the same people who would have been making bacchanal that the president was not properly kept informed over X, Y, Z. Insofar as what goes on between the Prime Minister office and the President office, a lot of that, for good order in this country, is in secret and remains in secret until either of these officers deem it fit to tell the population what the conversation is. But for someone to be demanding that the Prime Minister tell the country what took place as a conversation between myself and the President, it's just mischief-making nonsense. It's not meant to be that way. It's not in law to be that way. And nobody could tell me while I hold this office and took that oath that I want to know what you tell the president. And since I don't know what you told the president, I will make up all kind of story. And then when I make up my conspiracy theories, I then exercise the country over that.
Mr. Mohammed, again, the Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley there. I heard, you know, learned, you know, legal minds on this very same issue saying that, I don't want to call names, saying that, that we need to know, you know, who visited the president? And I'm sure you would have heard this as well. And what was the nature of that visit? And again, the Prime Minister is saying that, you know, he talks to the president all the time. You know, it's under his remit, and there's no you know, he's not duty bound to disclose anything you know, apart from what they may seem or deem, you know, should be you know, imparted to the population. And again, reinforcing an earlier point that you made.
The Honorable Prime Minister has been entrusted by the people with, among other things, the security and well-being of the citizens of this country. That is what a general election is all about.
Yes.
The Honorable Prime Minister sometimes comes across a bit brash, because that is the nature of the gentleman. Okay? But I tell you something. What he has just said there and what you have just replayed is a paraphrase of the legal position, the conventional position, the spirit of the Constitution. That is what he is talking about.
Yes.
In no unambiguous way, he is explaining that. But as I say, you know, to many, he comes across, you know, as being a brash person, and that is the nature of the gentleman. But he is correct in what he is saying. When an attorney questions the action of public officers, I'm on to the second branch of your question.
Yes.
Questions the actions of someone holding public office. Such an individual is living up to his oath of office. To be an attorney at law, you take an oath. The Prime Minister talked about he took 2 oaths of office.
Yes.
Right. Attorneys at law, they take an oath to uphold the Constitution and the law of the land. They are officers of the court, and they are merely discharging their responsibilities under the oath of office that they have taken.
Yes.
Right. Having said that, I will not, I cannot believe that any attorney at law is seeking to find out who were the visitors to President House. You see, there is a story.
Yes.
There is a story that is making the rounds. And that story is that the Prime Minister met with Her Excellency the President and the Chairman of the Police Service Commission.
Yes, yes, and there was something was cooked at that,
yes.
And so-called meeting. Yes,
there was a cook-up of a situation.
Yeah.
You know, let me give you a quick situation, a quick example of something that happened. And I hope I do it fast enough. When I was the Speaker of the House of Representatives, I was asked to accompany or meet with the then President, the then Head of State, together with the Prime Minister. And for the first time, I realized that there was a front entrance to President's house. There was always another entrance that I used whenever I had gone to President's house. And the house itself. And obviously, I wouldn't have the Prime Minister of the country waiting on me. So I had to arrive there a couple of minutes before the Prime Minister. And when I entered this front entrance for the first time in my life, who do you think was leaving President's house? The Honorable Chief Justice. And when he saw me, because as he was walking towards his vehicle, I was alighting from my vehicle. And when he saw me, he hailed out to me. Because I am a member of the bar, he is the Honorable Chief Justice, and we have a relationship, as colleagues at the bar, before he became even a judge of the High Court or Court of Appeal or Chief Justice. Yes. And he hailed out to me, "Hello, Mr. Speaker." How are you, pal?
Yes.
Because it was a private hailing out to me, and he wouldn't call me pal in the court of law. He wouldn't call me that at the ceremonial opening of the law courts in the Hall of Justice.
Yes.
Now, having said that, anyone could say the Prime Minister had not arrived yet. Anyone can say in that scenario that the Speaker of the House of Representatives and the Prime Minister of the country and the Chief Justice met at President's house.
Yes. Yes.
You understand what I'm talking about? If the Prime Minister visited President's house, so what? He is acting in the discharge of his duty. He's a very busy man. He didn't go there to share a cup of tea with Her Excellency. He went there on the people's business. And we now we are calling on her and we are calling on him to say whether or not both of them met with the chairman of the Police Service Commission.
And that resulted in what? Yes.
Sir, what are we dealing with? What level of civilized behavior are we dealing with in our country? You mean everything has to be Juve?
All right.
And that is where the problem is.
Well, I know part of the discussion as well, you know, and the issues have found, you know, their way into the bosom of the opposition. And opposition leader Mrs. Kamala Prasad Biswas has been speaking out. There is even a threat of you know, going to the courts to decide certain matters. But let's just get a listen to what the honorable opposition leader said at a previous media conference as well. And we will, I'll have you respond thereafter. Let's just get a listen to the opposition leader.
I gave a commitment that I will use all my powers legally and under the Constitution, all powers available, to hold those in office accountable. With the support of my 18 elected MPs in the House of Rep, I have filed a motion in Parliament pursuant to Section 36 of the Constitution for the establishment of a tribunal to investigate the removal of Her Excellency Paula May Weeks, ORTT, as President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. I have a copy of the motion here which we'll share with you, and it is signed by myself and all our 18 MPs. In some jurisdictions they call it an impeachment motion, but that is not what is said in our Constitution. Under Sections 35 and 36, this is a process I have employed to make the office of the President accountable to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. The motion is grounded on several facts, and those are set out in the Constitution. The motion has been filed pursuant to Section 36 of the Constitution, and the grounds are set out. There are only specific ways that you can seek to have a president removed from office, and those grounds are set out. 1, or A, that the President has behaved in such a way as to bring her office into hatred, ridicule, or contempt. That the President has willfully violated the Constitution, and that the President has endangered the safety and security of a nation, of the state. So those are grounds, and there's another one, but I don't think we've reached there yet. Another ground could be by reason of mental capacity and so on. At the rate some are going, some of us will reach there sooner than later, but that ground, we have not triggered that ground. We're using the other 3 grounds.
Mr. Mohammed, as I said, you know, in my opening, you have been here before, you know, a former speaker, you know, what the opposition leader, I mean, I think she's been very clear in terms of the intent, you know, of the opposition in moving this process forward, whether by way of the courts or petitions or what have you. Does the opposition leader have a strong case, you know, for removal of a president, Mr. Mohammed?
Let me say, first of all, the honorable leader of the opposition came across as if she was reading what she was reading there for the first time. She seems not to be fully seized of of the material that she was handling or in full grasp of what she was talking about. And that brings us to the point that that you have asked about grounds. Where is the evidence? Everything is pure speculation. And, you know, it really saddens me. It really saddens me. Some of the things that bother me most, Mr. Cummings, in these times, you know, what our children are experiencing in this pandemic. What are the citizens of our country, particularly the elderly, are going through? The small businessman, the one who has lost his job and has so many mouths to feed. You know, you never want to contemplate, sir, what it is like to look at those mouths that you have to feed, and you don't know where the next meal is coming from. And in the midst of what, did you see how many thousands have died and how many cases that we have had to date in this country? Today it was in one of the newspapers.
Yes.
How many deaths? I think 3,000 deaths, if I'm not mistaken. I'm subject to correction. In the midst of this pandemic, you know, and everybody else knows, if you do not know, that such a motion is a waste of time and can only have a very debilitating effect to further frustrate and hurt and affect our well-being. Why are you doing this? This can never make you win an election. Why are you doing this to our people, to our society? This is wrong. Mr. Cummings, you have to have majority support in a parliament for that kind of quote-unquote strategy to even get off the ground. Why are you doing it?
But I'm hearing the opposition leader saying, Mr. Mohammed, that I think there is an admittance on her part that this may not carry, and in addition to that, she's saying that if only to make a point or have it recorded that this was the response from the opposition, albeit something that may fail in the end.
So what is the point? That is the point. What is the point? What is the point she is making? There is no evidence. What are they talking about? Why are they compromising the office of president? And why are they trying to twist the arm of the incumbent, the office holder of that lofty office, to come out in Woodford Square and give an account to the people? Is that the way that the presidency of a civilized country operates? The question is no, that is not the way. This is an exercise in futility, but it is also an exercise to infuriate and to give armory and to give ammunition to those who would thrive in a society once the society is unsettled.
Right.
And that is the effect that what the opposition leader is doing will have on the country, and will never win her an election. I tell you that.
And you're listening to and viewing the Citizens Community Forum. Stephen Cummings. I have with me Mr. Nizam Mohammed, attorney at law, former Speaker of the House of Representatives and a former Chair of the Police Service Commission. Our topic this evening, investigating the role and function of independent institutions in a constitutional democracy, focus on Trinidad and Tobago. So, Mr. Mohammed, you see this, I don't know if to call it a motion, or how do we, certainly it's it's an attempt to impeach the president.
Well, the leader of the opposition said that much. She says In other countries, they call it impeachment, but in our constitution, it is not called impeachment, but that is what she's about. Didn't she say that?
Is this all politics, Mr. Mohammed?
It is all politics. Sir, you've got a wonderful program. You have your own standards and all of that, and I suffice it to say, it is not the kind of politics for this kind of season where we are faced with a pandemic and where our children are suffering. Let us put aside our partisan politics and let us come together for the good of all our people.
Yes.
You understand? Look at what has happened with the budget debate, when we should have been listening to the offerings of the opposition as to what we ought to be doing regarding the refloating of the economy of our country, and what we should be doing with respect to unemployment, what we should be doing with respect to giving comfort to our children and the elderly, what we should be doing in order to give support to the health system, because none of our systems, we are a third world country, and none is working the way you and I would like to see them working.
So we have broken systems, Mr. Mohammed, and we have just a few minutes before we close the program, and I wanted to just to ask you this final question, and of course I want you to give your closing remarks as well. Where do we go from here, Mr. Mohammed? Knowing that we have had there are so many issues in Trinidad and Tobago. When we look at public institutions, as I said, historically, going way back, to the days recently of the Integrity Commission, and I'm sure even going back further, we would find issues there with these independent bodies. Where do we go from here? In 2021, knowing that there are so many critical elements and agencies, and so that we have to kind of to find the right, I suppose, formula. Where do we go from here? And of course, your closing remarks.
Well, I agree that we have too many broken systems overall. Too many. We even have a broken leader of the opposition, if I am to express my closing remark. And I wish and I hope that we will understand the need for a coming together of our country, putting aside all of what has happened, because I tell you something, this mess started with the Police Service Commission. It ended with the resignation of the entire Police Service Commission. Can we put that aside, and can we continue to replace and to that Police Service Commission, and can we get return to normalcy and get everything back on track so that we can have a commissioner of police and we can have deputy commissioners of police, a properly constituted police service in which the members of the police service are happy to serve and to work, and in which the public will have confidence and we can come together to fight the issue of crime and bring back law and order into our country and into our society. And I want to thank you for this opportunity to participate in this discussion with you. I think it has been a very wonderful opportunity for both of us. You have raised issues that are so relevant, and I have tried my best to give some responses so that we can get our people thinking.
Yes.
I want to thank you for the opportunity.
Right. Mr. Mohammed, thank you so much again for taking the time to sit with us inside the Citizens Community Forum. I suspect that we're going to have to continue the discussion. There's so many other areas that we haven't really gone into relevant to, I suppose, good governance and issues of transparency and promoting integrity in public life. And, I'm sure that there's much more, that we could have touched on, and we probably will touch on at a future date. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to join us inside the Citizens Community Forum.
Not at all. I thank you for giving me the opportunity.
And that was And that was the Citizens Community Forum. Stephen Cummings. I had with me there Mr. Nizam Mohammed, attorney at law, former Speaker of the House of Representatives and former chair of the Police Service Commission. Our topic this evening, investigating the role and function of independent institutions in a constitutional democracy focus on Trinidad and Tobago. I'm Stephen Cummings. See you next Wednesday. It was a famous poet who once said, "They came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me." Words there from famous poet Martin Niemöller, 1892 to 1984.